DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation at Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation insider Connor Kaylee. And on today's show, we're not going to talk about Pro Day too much, but you were there yesterday, and I'm interested to know who was there, what were their facial expressions, did you use any Connor sort of intel to gather, I don't know, just things that we wouldn't have been able to see through the videos or press conferences?
Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons rolled deep. We'll see how many of the defensive guys they actually end up taking. They're certainly doing all the things that would indicate that maybe they're going to do that. We saw via our great Cody Chafin's, Michael Williams talking with Falcons general manager Terry Fontenot. So it'll be interesting to see if the Falcons actually decide to follow through this year on drafting a Georgia player. Remind you, they've never taken a Georgia player in the first or second round in their franchise history. But until I see that happen, I'm just going to pencil them in for taking someone like Mike Green from Marshall in the first round and then Gray Zabel from North Dakota State in the second.
Yeah, for the Falcons, it could go either way. They could be scouting future players or scouting future opponents because they're always thinking a couple steps ahead. Did you happen to tell Mike McDaniel that I loved him yesterday? Did that message get passed through?
No, that did not get passed through.
Well, that's a shame. He is probably, I'm not an NFL person at all, but I could go down the rabbit hole of watching Mike McDaniel videos. Just like, he is the anti-coach, in my opinion. He's a numbers guy, a Yale guy, a total nerd that just happened to end up being the head coach of an NFL team. And so, Mike McDaniel, if you're seeing this, sorry that message didn't get passed on to you yesterday, but I am one of your biggest fans. So, Connor, any last thoughts on Pro Day?
You sure know how to pick him for a guy that can't coach all that well.
Hey, listen. His videos are enough to keep me entertained when I go down the rabbit hole at night. So with that, we'll go ahead and get today's show started. This is DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Kaylee and Kaylee Mansell.
All right, I'm excited for this show in particular just because spring practice has started back, and so now we have content to actually talk about and the things that we've seen and the things that we've heard. So I'm really excited to get into today's show. This is what we've got going on. Based on what little we've seen, I can just already tell that there's something different about the 2025 season, and we're going to let you know what that is. Then we'll do our Dog Bite segment where we cover a variety of topics. This time we'll talk about C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, is it do or die for Ellis Robinson, and some of those injuries that are a little bit more important to spring practice than others. We'll follow it up with our favorite college football tweets of the week, and then, drum roll please, we've got another Connor Kaylee showdown, and this one definitely took a little bit more thought. It's going to be what's the best jersey number to have been worn at the University of Georgia across the board. So more on that later. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's start with this. So Connor and I both had the opportunity to attend the opening press conferences for spring practice, and from what little we were able to see, I'm already getting a sense that this 2025 team is motivated differently, and just the overall tone of what we were able to gather from them, it feels a lot different from where we were sitting last season.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, and this is something that I picked up on at Pro Day yesterday and talking to guys like Dominic Lovett and Arian Smith, they speak about positivity, and understandably there's a lot of negativity just sort of around the offense right now with the way things ended last season, with the decision to keep Mike Bobo and Stacey Searles there. And I think Gunnar Stockton in particular brings a lot of positivity to this team. He's just always got a smile on his face. He's a competitor. He brings a different juice than Carson Beck did a season ago. And I think that's going to help this team. I think they know what to expect moving forward in terms of navigating this schedule, in terms of what it's going to take. And last year we heard Kirby Smart speak so much about the mental toughness required from that team to pull out the wins that they had. I think he knows they need a similar mindset this year, but maybe not get caught up in the doom and gloom, maybe not get caught up in the NIL aspect of it there. I know a lot of people found it interesting, the comments that Kirby Smart made about passion and playing with that, and people pointed fingers at Carson Beck in that regard. I don't necessarily believe that's entirely fair or Carson's fault for the 2024 season, but that sort of mindset I think is very different going into 2025 than it was a season ago.
Yeah, you're right. Kirby Smart made a very strong message at the end of his questions, and I feel like that's what really set the tone for what we got to hear from the players after. So this is Kirby Smart on what he wants to see his players get out of spring practice.
Yeah, I want to see the fire. I want to see the passion, the energy. I want to see who wants to be a good football player, who really cares about this game. Like, they care more about the game than they do about their NIL revenue stream. Like, if you really, really, really care about the game and you want to be good, it doesn't matter about any kind of money. It matters how I play the game. And more we're seeing across college football, the purest, the ones that care about the game the most, play the hardest. And usually the team that plays hardest wins. I know everybody thinks it's just whoever's more talented, but there's a whole lot to how hard you play and how much you care about it. So my goal is to find out, how hard do you want to play? How much do you really want to be great? Because if you do, it'll show by how you practice.
So here's what I took away from this, and I think that you touched on it, Will. I don't put all this blame on Carson Beck, but clearly money was an issue last year, and not in the sense that certain players are getting paid more than others, because at the end of the day, they're all getting paid. But at some point during the season, it became a distraction away from the game, away from what was going on the field. There was so much outside noise about the money factor in all of this, and I think that's what Kirby Smart is trying to get away from here, so the players aren't as distracted by all that surrounding this concept of NIL.
This time a year ago, we were talking about Carson Beck and his Lamborghini. And, the phrase is that money changes people. And maybe that proved to be the case, not just with Carson Beck, but there were other players on that 2024 team that I think were impacted by NIL and the things that come with that and the strings that come with that. And I think going into this season, you want to see a little bit more acclamation from the Georgia staff and Georgia roster in terms of dealing with that. NIL is less new now than it was a season ago. And I think as they get more and more comfortable with what this is going to look like, I think that introduces a better idea of what you want your culture and your team mindset to be. Now, revenue sharing, I think, is going to change some of this. That is expected to start officially in July, with the House settlement going for final approval on April 7th. But Georgia's going to have to figure out a way to, I think, balance the chemistry aspect of it. We've heard so much talk from these departing players about how this team this past year just wasn't as close as it was in 2021 or in 2022. They talk about connection, the brotherhood, whatever they want to use. It wasn't as tight as it was a season ago. And so I'm interested in going forward, seeing how it goes about getting fixed. I asked CJ Allen about playing hard, about playing with passion, and he's maybe not the best guy to ask about, just because he's a guy who, comes from Central South Georgia, depending on where you define his hometown. And like, he is the perfect guy, and a guy I think Kirby Smart wants to find more of. But you're also going to have to find ways to win with guys that do require big NIL price tags, and encouraging them to come here out of high school while paying them before they got on the field and a chance to produce. So I'm interested in seeing how Georgia goes about balancing that as they fill out the roster with this talent.
I completely agree. I thought someone who also touched on this subject really well was CJ Allen. So here's CJ Allen on the new tone of the offseason and what he plays for. Now, this is two clips thrown together, but we'll hear them both.
And just for one, the standard is always going to be the standard, no matter who's here and who's left. Those guys, they're gone. They can't help us with what's going on now. So we're trying to focus on who's here and who's on the field with us now. Just keeping the main thing. When I was 7 years old, I wasn't getting paid to play the game. I was playing for free. So just keeping the main thing, and knowing why I do it for myself, my family, and for God. So just keeping the main thing.
So clearly, we're hearing this from Kirby Smart, and now we're hearing this from CJ Allen. So the message between the coaches and the team is harmonious with one another, and it sounds like they're trying to play for each other and not how much money they make. And when you have a team that plays for each other, which some of that I think is what they were lacking last year, it's going to allow them to open up this new door and create a whole nother level of success for this team.
And I think it's important to note here, there's one guy on this Georgia team this year that was on that 2021 national championship team. That's Micah Morris. There's, I think, 13 or 14 guys that were on that 2022 team. And so it is a younger roster, and it is one that does not have that same championship experience, that same championship pedigree. And so I think you're easier able to sell the hunger, the desire to craft your own legacy, the desire to win your own championship, because the fact is a lot of guys on this roster haven't done that yet. And so going into 2025, I think it's right now a little bit easier to sell that hunger, to sell that closeness of everyone coming together, because even some of the guys that have stuck around from those championship teams, they weren't necessarily big contributors, because I believe those guys are now off either playing in the NFL or set to go play in the NFL. So it's interesting in seeing how tight they are in terms of the fact that they acknowledge this, that they're already talking about it. But that's not going to be tested until the Bullets get live this fall and we find out, okay, you got to go on the road to Tennessee on September 13th. 2 weeks later, you're playing Alabama at home. How close, how together is this team then when things admittedly get more difficult? Because it's a lot easy to come out, I think, and say these things right now on the first day of spring practice.
But at the same time, I feel like it makes it easier for these guys to want to play for one another when you respect the one person that controls such a huge part of the game. I think we got a really good sense of just how much this team respects Gunnar Stockton. And just hearing about the things that they said about him during the Sugar Bowl, and Ernest Green was asked about Gunnar Stockton. I thought he gave us some really good insight into how the team sees him. So here's Ernest Green.
Well, you know, Gunner's obviously a very likable human. You know, a lot of people don't have too many bad things to say about Gunner, but, you know, just the consistency aspect of it. You know, it's easy to be who you're supposed to be for 1 day or 2 days, but just seeing somebody be the same person over a course of, I want to say 2 months now, so it's really just consistency stands out.
Word of the day. Today's word of the day is consistency. And even though Carson Beck wasn't that consistent of a player all season long, the consistency that he's talking about is the consistency as a person, as a human being, not the player and what you're able to do on the field, but the fact that Gunnar is the same person to the core day in and day out. That's going to help with some of that distraction that Georgia faced last year with a person who maybe wasn't as consistent day in and day out. But Gunnar's got that, and that's why they respect him more than ever. And that, again, goes back to these guys. It seems like they want to play more for each other, and Gunnar Stockton, in my mind, is a huge part of that.
Right. And, you know, look, Gunnar, I think personality-wise, he obviously brings something different to this team than Carson did a season ago. But at the same point in time, you know, look, I know it's easy to dunk on Carson right now. It's easy to point fingers. Gunnar Stockton's probably not going to be as good of a high-end quarterback as Carson was a season ago. And Carson did some really good things for this team. They need the players around Gunnar to play better than they did a season ago. Oscar Delp flat out said as much at the end of the Notre Dame game last year. And so, you know, if Gunnar's able to galvanize those around him and help, that's great. But they're going to need the wide receiver room to step up. They're going to need the offensive line room to play better. They're going to need Nate Frazier to take care of the football and not have the fumbling issues that he had a season ago. Defensively, they're going to need stops, sacks, turnovers, something they didn't do as great as they have in years past. Having a new quarterback and a consistent energy in Gunnar Stockton is nice, but they're going to need to be better all around him. And so that's why, you know, yes, it's good that the vibes are good right now around Georgia, but they've got to go out there and still be a talented team. And Kirby Smart, I think very bluntly at the end of last season said, last year's team was not our most talented team. And they're putting probably another double-digit amount of guys in the NFL. So I think that should tell you a lot about what to expect from this year's team.
But here's the thing. This is my final thought on all of this. I think this team knows that. They have something different to prove than last year's team did because they just had the one loss to Alabama in the SEC championship, and maybe some of them felt like they were snubbed from the college football playoff because they could have actually won it. Well, this year's team had the opportunity and still couldn't do it. But I think that there's a self-awareness with this team that they know that every position group has to get better across the board. Now, they brought in some talent to help with that lack of talent they had last year, but also the coaching staff knows that things need to get better, and it's that self-awareness that I heard from Braylon Wilson, C.J. Allen, and Ernest Green that they know that they have to step up, and they can get there as long as they understand that, hey, I've got to do my part, and then I can help contribute to the team. And maybe it's that motivation or the tone that Kirby Smart set that's why this team feels different to me, at least.
It's a younger team. It is obviously a different team. I don't think this team is going to have the feel that the 2021 team did where there were 20 seniors on that team. And part of that is just the way the college football has changed as they've moved further away from that COVID year. But this is a hungrier team. And I don't necessarily know if this is going to be a team that is going to be able to win a national championship. But I do think that they are at least going to attempt to try and reestablish what Georgia previously was and course correct back to that. Again, I don't know if they have the talent. We're 1 day into spring practice at the time we're recording this. But I think that they recognize that there are some things that they have to fix internally this year, even before they step on the field and play in Alabama, a Texas, a Florida this coming season, that they've got to try to fix and at least acknowledge that that's something that we have to do better going forward. And we're ultimately going to see, you can see, I think, some tangible impacts of that this spring.
Because this is a younger team, some of the guys who are going to have to step into leadership roles are also a little bit on the younger side, and we'll cover more of those in our Dog Bite segment. But at first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are always so excited to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what we love about Zagoria Law Firm is that they are the only law firm in the state that represents people who have been bitten by dogs as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. That's right, dog fans. They are the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs. They literally wrote the book on how to win these cases. So if you or a loved one has been hurt by someone else's dog, give them a call at 833-GA-DOG-BITE. That's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. With that, let's do Dog Bites. All right, let's start with the leaders. C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson were picked for the first group of people to speak. To me, that speaks volumes about how Kirby Smart sees them. They have the most experience out of that true junior group, and it's crazy because it just feels like yesterday we were watching them play in the SEC Championship as freshmen. Even though maybe they didn't play to what we thought they were going to be, they certainly grew a lot last year. But this year, these are two people that have to make the biggest jumps in terms of what we see on them from the field, but they're also going to be the quarterbacks of that defense. So Raylan Wilson, C.J. Allen got to be leaders on the field and off the field for this Dogs team.
Yeah, look, expectations have always been very high for these two, just I think given what they were able to come in and do as true freshmen. And look, you look at the history of linebackers inside Kirby Smart, like Roquan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Jalen Walker, Smael Mondon, Quay Walker. All those guys were really highly rated recruits, top 100 overall prospects, people that at a lot of schools probably could have come in and play linebacker right away. It wasn't until their third year in the program, that junior season, where those guys started to figure things out and play a lot better. And so you look at Dean, Smith, and Jalen Walker, all those guys won Butkus Awards in their third year in the program. I'm not saying C.J. Allen or Raylan Wilson are going to do that, but you saw in past those guys make big leaps in that third year. And I think these guys know they absolutely can do that. And I think Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann know they need them to do that if this defense is to be as salty as, say, the 2021 or 2022 defense was.
And continuing on with the defense, Ellis Robinson is somebody that Georgia fans are just waiting on that first big appearance from him. And for you, you said this is a do or die year for Ellis Robinson. What do you mean by that?
I just think, look, there's an opportunity here for him to come in and earn a starting job opposite Dalen Everett. And Dalen Everett dealing with a sports hernia injury, he's going to be limited this spring. That's going to create more reps for Ellis Robinson. And look, in this day and age of college football and NIL and the transfer portal, you do wonder if he's not able to break through this year. I'm not saying it has to happen this spring. If he's not able to break through this year, does he maybe, wonder where his career goes from here? Because Georgia's got other talented cornerback options. Daniel Harris, DeMello Jones is someone who I don't think gets talked about enough, just given all I think that we've seen from him to this point in his career. And so with Ellis, there's real pressure on him now, I think, to come in and try and win that starting cornerback job, because if it's not, it may not end up happening at Georgia. And look, we joked, and it's going to be a CKS showdown here coming up. Mm-hmm. That number 1 jersey is the farthest one that I would run from. And I do not want to see a great player in that. He's got a chance to try and break the alleged curse of the number 1 jersey. But it is at least a little worrying as we enter spring right now and see, okay, is this going to be a guy who's going to be able to come in and earn a starting spot? Or is he going to be, another 5-star player that ultimately maybe ends up looking elsewhere? It's going to be a very interesting spring and offseason for Ellis Robinson in that regard.
So one thing I'm interested too, because today is the first day you'll get practice availability, and I'm curious to see how much bigger Ellis Robinson looks, because he was one of the smaller, more scrawny players coming into the program. So I'm hoping he's one of those guys that's gotten a little bit bigger, and we're all going to notice it and be talking about it next week when we see the picture of him come out. So I want to see the best for Ellis Robinson. He's really got a chance to do this. So much raw talent, but it's got to be able to translate over. So as you mentioned, there are some injuries. Kirby Smart addressed them right off the top. Some of the guys who will be out for a lot of the spring: Christian Miller, Roderick Robinson, Branson Robinson, Monroe Freeling, Gabe Harris, Colton Heinrich, and then some of the younger guys as well as Brett Thorson. And a lot of these, okay, Rod and Branson have been injured for like ever. Monroe Freeling probably needed that time to get healthy. At least for me, the most impactful one that I see is someone like Gabe Harris, because I think yesterday was a big reminder of just how many guys in the outside linebacker core and the edge rusher group, like, they're gone. So that group needs as many reps as possible, and especially since that position group is so young this year, they need someone like Gabe Harris out there showing them the way.
It's a massive offseason for Gabe Harris, because even though he's a guy he's going to play on the defensive line as well, with what Georgia has at the outside linebacker room, they just don't have a lot of proven players out there. Quintavious Johnson, I think, now becomes way more important this spring with Harris out. And then behind him, you have Isaiah Gibson, Chase Linton, and Darren Akinabon, but those guys have never played a collegiate snap before, so their heads are undoubtedly going to be spinning this spring. Look, the outside linebacker position, it is not what a lot of people think it is in the University of Georgia defensive scheme. It is sometimes a thankless role. So in that regard, it may not be a huge loss, but Georgia expects big things from Gabe Harris this season. And while, someone like Christian Miller, who I think is similarly facing big expectations going in this year, even he's played, I think, a good bit more in a larger role than Harris has. And so with Gabe Harris, him not being there this spring, it ramps up the question of what do we see from him when he's able to get back on the practice field in August, because Georgia very flatly needs Gabe Harris to be an impact player this year.
This one's going to make some of y'all mad, but when you look at the facts, it might point in the direction that Georgia might just have the best coaching staff in the country, or at least, here comes that word of the day again, consistency. They're bringing just about everybody back, and I know that y'all have some people that y'all aren't big fans of, and that's okay, but at the same time, the fact that Kirby Smart was able to retain a lot of these guys, they want to stay. They want to coach for him. They want to lead this team to where it's been before. And so what other college football programs can say that they've retained and had that much consistency within their coaching staff? Because now it seems like nobody wants to be in college football anymore.
Right. Ohio State, who just won a national title, they had to replace both of their coordinators. Clemson has a new defensive coordinator this year. You see turnover pretty consistently throughout the coaching staff. Texas loses their running backs coach, Tashard Choice, to the NFL. The fact that Georgia brings back all 10 assistant coaches, I think, is very big for them. It allows them to have consistency, especially with such a young roster. And I think that's going to be big going forward. I know there are people out there, you might take, the Clemson coordinator duo of Garrett Riley and Tom Allen. You might take what Penn State has with Jim Knowles now stepping in as their defensive coordinator. But when you factor in the entire staff, that means you get guys like Todd Hartley, Trey Scott as well, Chidera Uzo-Deribe, who I know is a very valued member of this coaching staff. They like what they have here at Georgia. And again, 1 through 10, not just the two coordinators. I think Georgia very much loves what they have in this coaching staff, and that's going to play out on the field in 2025.
All right, last one. Perhaps the freshman that we've heard the most talked about this entire offseason has been Elijah Griffin, the 5-star defensive lineman, the highest rated player in the class of 2025. Now, before we talk about him, I want to go ahead and let y'all hear from Warren Brinson what he thinks Elijah Griffin can be for this Dogs team. Here's Warren Brinson.
Oh my God. Yeah, the next year we play. Watch this again. Next year we play. Oh yeah, man.
Where did you see him play?
Who, Elijah? No, I saw him at practice yesterday.
Okay. Did you see him in Savannah?
No, I saw him at practice yesterday out here in Eastville. Yeah, he's legit.
All right, now you do have to remember that these two are boys from the past. They know each other from Savannah, so definitely keep that in mind. But also as a reminder, this is not the first time that Warren Brinson has spoke out about Elijah Griffin, and I don't know if Elijah Griffin's ever going to get to Jalen Carter status, but he might be the second best defensive lineman after Jalen Carter for this Dogs team, and he seems to be someone that all of the guys are excited to see what he's capable of. Connor, you got a smirk on your face, so I'd love to know what you have to say.
You think Jalen Carter was a better, more impactful defensive lineman for the Georgia program than, say, like a Jordan Davis or Richard Seymour?
In terms of talent, yeah.
In terms of impact, I'm not maybe willing quite to go there for Jalen Carter, even a Trayvon Walker, who was number 1 overall pick. Certainly, David, I would have David Pollock over Jalen Carter. But this is maybe stemming into a Connor Kaylee showdown territory. Look, the expectations are very high for Elijah Griffin, and I'm sure Kirby Smart's not thrilled that Warren Brinson went out there and said that. I think that interview is probably why we didn't get a chance to hear from Warren Brinson all that often during his Georgia career. So expectations are incredibly high for Griffin. And look, he doesn't need to come in and be a star right away. It's very difficult to do that at Georgia on the defensive line, especially just given the jump in physicality going from, I believe, a two-way school in Georgia to the SEC. But can he be a rotation player? Can he give you snaps? I absolutely believe he can, and I'll be interested in seeing, does he factor his way into that pass rush package that we saw a Trayvon do, that we saw a Jalen Carter do, if not at the start of the season, maybe as the season develops along.
All right, so in just a moment, we are going to do our favorite college football tweets of the week, but it's Thursday, tomorrow is the weekend, and at least for me, the weekend always means that I'm going to have a finished long drink, just like I did last weekend, just like I'm going to do this weekend. So for those of you who had not had the opportunity to try one yet, now is your time to do so. You can find them in just about any liquor store and a lot of bars nowadays, and there's one for everyone, depending on what you like. It's a pre-made gin cocktail. You can have the white one, which is a little bit on the healthier side. If you're into the flavored ones, cranberry and peach. I really like the cranberry one. You can't go wrong with classic blue. And then there's that black one from when you just had like a really, really long day and you need something that's a little bit on the stronger side. So you can find out where the nearest finished long drink to you is by visiting their website at thelongdrink.com. Just put in your city or your zip code, and it'll tell you where you can go find them. So make sure to check it out on thelongdrink.com. Again, that's thelongdrink.com. Now let's do Meme Machine.
Who's that coming down the track? Who's that coming down the track? It's a Meme Machine, red and black. It's a Meme Machine, red and black. Go, no!
Now we welcome in Cody Chaffins.
All right. Hey, everybody.
So I'm not going to lie. I had to dig through the archives for my meme. And then some news was brought to my attention today. So I had to go back and find one that was more appropriate for current news. So I'm actually going to go first on this one. If you haven't heard yet, Carson Beck got dumped. So this comes from John Powell, F3. It says Carson Beck couldn't even be a good teammate to the girl he moved for. The guy's decidedly not dialed in. I told you guys that we were going to use the word consistency a lot today, and I saw something, and it just it was one of those the lights came on moments. He said, you know why college football teams can't go undefeated anymore in this era? Because it's up to men who are in their 20s who are some of the most inconsistent people ever. Take Carson Beck, for example. So that is my meme for today. We can choose to talk about it or not talk about it, so I will just pass it to Cody.
It was very interesting.
I'm going to jump in here. I don't believe that Carson Beck got dumped. The guy that made the social video for that one, I don't trust people that give me news with a backwards hat, which is what he was wearing in the video. 2, if you check Carson Beck's Instagram, he still has pictures of Hannah Cavender. He still follows her. All the points that he made were fairly quickly debunked in that regard.
Okay.
So,
but it's not about his, it's about hers.
She did scrub him off the
She wiped the
Instagram,
slate
right?
clean. She wiped everything, and she doesn't follow him. So they're definitely not together.
She could just be mad at him. Again, if you want to trust and get your news from a guy who works for, I think, the Better account with a backwards hat, go for it.
Let me tell you.
I'm gonna have a little bit more journalistic integrity when it comes to this.
I have girl integrity and women intuition, and let me tell you, she knows that they're a public couple, and the eyes are on them. So if she was just mad at him and then went and deleted all the stuff, then she knows what sort of attention that brings on them. So I think that at least she's social media savvy enough to know not to do that unless it's over.
Or she's just mad at Carson and wants people to potentially, make fun of him for this, which has exactly ended up happening. So,
and we wish everybody the best and all involved in that situation.
All right, Cody.
All right, my meme actually comes from an incredible tweeter. It was me yesterday. I put out this piece of video from Malachi Starks, which I thought was really impressive. And so it's Malachi Starks yesterday at Pro Day. He makes this catch, grabs the ball, hits the ground, then finds out he's got a rope to jump over, jumps over it, keeps his balance the entire time. It was really, really impressive. So I put it out there. And the other part that was really cool about this is, hey, there's 3 NFL head coaches who all were watching it. There is your man, Mike McDaniel. So we got a Mike McDaniel video on the show today.
Wow.
Also, Mike Tomlin, Raheem Morris from the Falcons. And here it is in real time, which so you can appreciate it a little more. I shoot all that in slow-mo, but it happens bang, bang. So not only does he recognize it, he jumps over it. I thought it was pretty impressive. So, yeah, that may be a first where I put my own meme as my meme machine.
No, that's perfectly fair. That's a great video.
Well done.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got that one because that's a very Malachi Starks moment. So thank you, Cody, for your contribution. Connor?
Well done. I similarly am going to lean on the talents of producer extraordinaire Cody Chaffins here for my meme of the week. It comes from the Combine. We didn't have a meme machine last week, but Tate Ratledge running the 40, sub 540, that mullet flowing beautifully. Internet had a ton of fun with it. The play in Freebird under it, behind it. But Cody, ever the journalist here, asked Tate Ratledge about how he felt about that. He was a big fan of it. Cody, great job on following up on the Tate Ratledge mullet Freebird collaboration there. And just a fun little moment from the Combine where a number of Georgia players had standout days.
Yeah, I was very curious. I just wondered if I didn't know if there were other ones. I had only seen the Freebird one, which we weren't going to play Freebird on here to keep us YouTube safe. But, yeah, so I said, was there another one? He said he wasn't really thrilled with the close-up of his face. You saw that kind of the NFL Network, I think, had all the different guys, the weird facial expressions they all make as they run. Because they're all so trained now to run the 40, so they're trying to be like track stars who, they get their relaxed face or whatever. So he wasn't thrilled about that. But it was fun to hear him talk about it. And he's been so open and great with us. What I thought was so interesting about just doing the interviews yesterday at Pro Day was for a lot of guys, more so than like senior day or the tech game, it hit them all that like that was it. We saw sides of those guys, which like Xavier Truss almost started crying. Like for him, he knew that was the last time he was going to be around everybody and be in that facility working out. I thought that part was really interesting.
Wow, that makes me get emotional for them.
It was because you expect that on like senior day, but Pro Day, yeah, they all got super emotional about it. So there you go.
All right, now it's time to put the emotions away and present the facts because this is the Connor Kaylee Showdown.
It's time for the Connor Kaylee Showdown.
The issue on the table today is that Connor and I are going to pick what has been the best UGA jersey number and the people that have worn it. So just generally what has been a good number for Georgia fans. I think Connor made a good point earlier that number 1 has not always been number 1 for Georgia. So this is going to be a good one. You could go a bunch of different ways with this. So I guess what we'll do is we'll flip the coin and we'll see who wants to go first or who wants to go second.
All right. We'll let Kaylee won the last one. So Connor, you get to call it in the air.
Heads.
It is tails.
Yes.
Kaylee, would you like to kick or receive here?
I'm gonna go first.
All right.
I'm gonna go
She'll
first.
take the ball.
I'm taking the ball.
All right, Kaylee, give us the best UGA jersey number of all time.
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie. Whenever we were coming up with this topic yesterday, in my mind, I knew what number I was going to do. I had it set in my heart. But then I started digging more and more into it, and I was like, you know what? There's a sneaky good number across the board, and it just so happens to be my lucky number because I was born on 8/8. And if you look at the history of Georgia number 8s, it's not just the new age guys, but the old age guys. You got Buck Bellew, who led UGA to a national championship. David Green, SEC Freshman of the Year, SEC Championship game MVP, first team All SEC. two-time second-team All-SEC. You look at A.J. Green, two-time All-American, two-time All-SEC Freshman of the Year. And then, of course, you've got Terrence Edwards, who holds so many records for Georgia across the board. And then you've got guys, honorable mentions, Riley Ridley, Tony Flack, who was a part of the Georgia team that held the record for most interceptions in a single season. So it's a great mix of offensive legends, really good guys on the defense. So I think that 8 is actually the sneaky good number to wear for Georgia. And this year, a lot of potential as well, because it's going to be Janelle Aguero and Colby Young, who really didn't have the opportunity to showcase their skills this season. But both of these guys could make a name for themselves wearing the number 8. So I rest my case.
All right. So first off, penalty on the play.
Flag on the play. Yeah.
You got your greens, too many greens. David Green was 14 at Georgia. So
are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
I watched it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
So, but
well,
okay. We'll keep
just go ahead and give it to Connor.
Hey, you got AJ Green, a Buck Bellew. It was on my list. Connor, what's the best UGA jersey number of all time?
There's a part of me that wants to make the case for 34 just because it's Herschel Walker. It's iconic. It's retired. You know exactly who it is. But we're going to try and grab as many people across eras. And we're going to take the number 3 jersey, DJ Shockley, Roquan Smith. For my money, the coolest player of the 21st century, Todd Gurley. Even if you want to look at Kaylee's current example, you've got guys like CJ Allen and Nate Frazier, who I think are ready to wear that number this year and be impact players, if not the best players on this Georgia team. So many great players have worn this Georgia jersey. Zamir White, who I think really embodied what that team was about in 2021 in terms of coming together. He was a senior on that team. He stuck around for a long time. Kamari Lassiter, I think, on that 2022 team as well, and what he brought to the table and the toughness and how he continues to represent Georgia so well at the next level. So I'm going to go the number 3 jersey, spanning a ton of different greats and a number of players that you see that you can think multiple iconic players across the Georgia landscape, whether it's Gurley, whether it's Roquan, whether it's DJ Shockley. I'm going with number 3.
Can I say something really quick?
All right, Kaylee, you've got the floor.
Okay. Number 1, that was really great, Connor. That's what I had as my backup in case you went with number 8. And I do want to apologize for my mistake. It's probably going to cost me this, and I'm better than that. But I couldn't go back through and find all the numbers for each Georgia thing. So don't believe everything the internet tells you, because I had ChatGPT go through a bunch of numbers for me. That's what led me to that. So I will accept defeat on this.
Intelligence.
So
she used AI for her. That's tough.
No, I used AI to tell me I went through the players who are players that have worn for this number and this number and this number and this number. So, because I mean, you only have so much time, you know. So I got them to help me look through all the players who had worn that number.
Very interesting. And Kaylee, one other point that I thought was interesting. Before we came to this, Kaylee thought she knew where you were going, Connor. Tell us about it.
I thought that you were going to go 19. I thought that you were going to take quality over quantity necessarily and go the Brock Bowers and I believe Hines Ward, right? He wore
Brock Bowers, Hines Ward, Scott Warner, College Football Hall of Famer.
That's what I thought that
Grant.
You were going to do. I thought that you would go the very Connor argument route.
Yes. Okay, so Connor went with number 3. Kaylee with number 8. I will give some honorable mentions out. I love 24 as a sneaky good. Noshawn, Malachi, Lindsey Scott, my man Kent Lawrence, former judge in Athens, Clark County. Number 4 has a great history. Champ Bailey, Nolan Smith, Mecole Hardman, James Cook, Sean Bailey, Kentrell Curry up in Toccoa, Georgia. I used to work up there. Fran Tarkenton at number 10, Thomas Davis, Eric Zier. So some really good numbers, a lot of great choices out there. And Kaylee is going to be correct on this one. We'll blame it on AI. And we'll give Connor takes the lead in the Connor Kaylee showdown 6-5 as he comes through with number 3 being his greatest UGA jersey of all time. Guys, take us home.
I will accept defeat for a rookie era. I think that both of us made good arguments, and chances are if you took number 8, I had my names written down for number 3, so I will accept defeat, as is my own mistake. Sometimes that's just what it is, but the good thing is you can always take a lesson from this, and that's to fact check everything that AI tells you.
That's not the lesson I would take from this. I believe the lesson I would take is to not use AI in the first place. Watch a Terminator movie. Just one. T1, T2, even T3.
it just helped me to narrow down my research, Got a lot going on these days. So I was hoping that it could help me out with that because there really is you would think that Georgia, like the University of Georgia, would have a record of these types of things, but no, they don't. So anyway, I accept defeat. I thought that you had a great answer, and if you were going to make something else, then that's the one that I was going to make. So I think you did a really great job. So good job on your win. And we'll, before we wrap up, let's give a quick shout out to Daytona Beach. Summer's coming up. It's time to start thinking about your summer plans, whether you just want to take a trip on your own, you want to go on a trip with your family. One place that you can't go wrong is Daytona Beach. It's 23 miles of Atlantic shoreline, and there's so much to do. A really great downtown area, but also very outdoorsy stuff. You can kayak, you can fish, you can hike, you can play golf. It's very family friendly. So as you start thinking about those summer vacations, look no further than Daytona Beach. You can drive, fly directly into their airport, and now is a great time to score amazing deals on coastal accommodations, and you can do that by visiting DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. That's DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals. All right, Connor, what'd you learn on today's show? And don't make an AI joke. I already admitted defeat, so just take it something else and run with it.
Let's see. What did I learn today? I learned that Kaylee considers number 8 to be her lucky number, even though that did not prove to be all that lucky in our Connor Kaylee showdown.
It's weird. It's weird. So I share 8 with my grandfather, but also like my birth things kind of line up weird. I was born August 8th, 2000 at 2:08 p.m. and I'm the oldest of 8 granddaughters. Like it's a whole thing. So maybe that's my lucky number. Not today, but still. I think there's a lot of greatness in store for people that have 8 associated with them, and I hope that for Colby Young and Janelle Aguero this year. So rooting for the number 8s. All right, thank you guys so much for joining DawgNation at Large this week. We'll see you right back here next Thursday at 7 o'clock.